So again, good morning everyone. I hope you're all doing good. So today I'm going to discuss the lumbar plexus and the autonomic nerves and the plexus within the posterior abdominal wall or just in front of the posterior abdominal wall. So without any further ado, let's get started. I hope you're all able to clearly hear the audio. If there is any disturbance, let me know. So the nerves and the plexus within the the posterior abdominal wall, they're essentially derived from the lumbar nerves, and the autonomic nerve system consists of sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is mainly or is exclusively from the thoracic sympathetic chain or thoracic sympathetic segments, and the parasympathetic is derived from vagus and the sacral vagal output. Okay, so we are going to discuss this in as much detail as possible. So if you have any doubts, you can ask me. We'll try to clarify them. So the posterior abdominal wall contains the lumbar plexus, and many autonomic plexuses and ganglia, which lie close to the abdominal aorta and its branches. So there is lumbar plexus, which is derived from the lumbar spinal segments, which emerge out of their respective intervertebral foramina, and they form a plexus within the psoas major muscle. And apart from this lumbar plexus, you also have within the abdominal cavity or within the retroperitoneum a large number of plexus and ganglia formed, which are more or less related to the abdominal aorta and the branches which supply the numerous intra-abdominal structures. Okay. So as you can see in this diagram, so you have the lumbar spinal segments or spinal nerves which emerge out of the intervertebral foramen, and then immediately they divide into a dorsal branch and the ventral branch, or the dorsal primary ramus and the ventral primary ramus. The ventral primary ramus, as it comes out, further divides into a ventral division and a dorsal division. Okay, just like you have seen it in the brachial plexus, you will have the spinal nerve coming out of the intervertebral foramen, where they divide into dorsal ramus and the ventral ramus, and ventral ramus divides into ventral division and the dorsal division, and these further combine in various different ways to form the lumbar plexus, which the important or the main nerves from the lumbar plexus include the iliohypogastric, ilioinguinal, and the genitofemoral nerve, obturator nerve, the femoral nerve, and the lumbosacral trunk. So these are the main branches from the lumbar plexus, and this plexus takes place, or this network of nerves is formed within the uh, psoas major muscle, the substance of the psoas major. There are two laminae, posterior lamina, which arises from the transverse processes of the lumbar vertebrae, and the anterior lamina arises from the vertebral bodies and the intervertebral discs. So between those two laminae, there is a plexus of nerves which is derived from the lumbar spinal nerves, which is called the lumbar plexus. So the lumbar plexus is mainly contributed by L1, L2, L3 and L4. Okay, but that is the most commonest type. Doesn't mean that is the only contribution. many times T12 may be involved in the formation of lumbar plexus. Okay, and the most common presentation or most common variety is what is discussed in this lecture. So you have L1, L2, L3 and L4, which further divide into a dorsal division and the ventral divisions. The ventral divisions join together to form certain nerves, and dorsal divisions also join together to form certain nerve. Most of the dorsal divisions join together to form the femoral nerve, and most of the ventral divisions join together to form the obturator. The first lumbar ventral ramus, together with variable contribution from the 12th thoracic ventral ramus or the dorsalumbar nerve, will form the lumbar plexus. The first 4 lumbar ventral rami, that is L1 to L4, and variably from the 12th thoracic spinal nerve will form the lumbar plexus. And the lumbar ventral rami, the ventral rami which arise from the intervertebral foramina pass laterally into the posterior part of the psoas major, anterior to the transverse process of the lumbar vertebrae. Okay, and the plexus lies in a coronal plane that is in line with the posterior part of the vertebral body at L1, but becomes more anterior in the lower lumbar spine, which essentially means that if you look at the diagram here, in the upper part the nerves are slightly posterior in a coronal plane. If you take a coronal plane, they are posterior in the upper part and they become more anterior as you go downwards into the lower lumbar region. So the first 4 lumbar spinal nerves, as I said, along with T12, sometimes T12 may not contribute, but it may contribute by joining with the L1 to form iliohypogastric nerve. Okay, it may contribute and join with L1 to form the lumbar plexus. There are many variations which are very common and which are required to be known if you are a surgeon, if you want to do abdominal surgeries. The first lumbar ramus or lumbar ventral ramus, so the dorsal ramus goes to the back and supplies the back muscles. The ventral ramus is joined by the 12th thoracic, T12 or the subcostal nerve, and these contributes to the formation of iliohypogastric and the ilioinguinal nerves. Most of the times the T12 will join with L1 to contribute, or there may be a small branch from the T12 or the subcostal nerve which will join L1 and form the iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal, or it may be absent altogether, or that communication may not be there. In that case, iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal will be coming directly from L1, or sometimes L2 can contribute. Okay, these run laterally on the posterior abdominal wall. So as you saw in the diagram, iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal nerves, they traverse or they pass along the posterior abdominal wall laterally and inferiorly, inferolaterally. Okay, and as this is happening, these both iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal nerves, they reach up to the iliac fossa on both the sides, and there they pierce the transversus abdominis muscle while supplying those muscles, the anterolateral abdominal wall muscles, and then they reach their respective regions where they need to supply. Iliohypogastric will wind around this pelvic brim and pierces the transversus abdominis and reaches up to the hypogastrium or the suprapubic region. Ilioinguinal nerve comes here, passes through the transversus abdominis and then enters the inguinal canal, where it will divide into inguinal branch, or the basically it supplies the region around the groin or the inguinal fold, and the medial aspect, or the basically the upper part of the femoral triangle. And L1 and L2, as you can see in this, branches from L1 and L2, they join together to form the genitofemoral nerve. Basically, a small branch from L1 and L2, they join together to form the genitofemoral nerve. The second, third and the fourth lumbar ventral rami divide into, so you have L2, L3 and L4. This ventral primary ramus will further divide into a ventral division and a dorsal division. In this diagram, the darker posteriorly appearing division is the dorsal division, and the anterior lightly colored one is the ventral division. These ventral divisions from L2, L3 and L4 join to form the obturator nerve, whereas the dorsal divisions from L2, L3 and L4 ventral primary rami will join together to form the femoral nerve, which is the largest nerve from the lumbar plexus. So the remaining fibers from L4, they join with L5 to become the lumbosacral trunk, which descends down and joins with the sacral plexus. Okay, so L4 and L5, they join and form the lumbosacral trunk, which will join with the sacral plexus to form the contribute to the sacral plexus. So the branches from the dorsal divisions of second and third lumbar rami unite to form the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve. As you can see, so we have the ventral divisions joining here in front, they are forming the obturator nerve, and you have the dorsal divisions from L2, L3, L4 joining to form the femoral nerve. But there is another nerve which is emerging from the dorsal divisions. Okay, dorsal division of L3 and L2 joining to form the lateral femoral cutaneous, okay, or lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh. Sometimes there is an additional nerve which is called the accessory obturator nerve. When it is present, it usually arises from the third and fourth ventral divisions. Okay, and these lumbar plexus are supplied, or they receive their blood supply from the lumbar arteries. So in this diagram, as you can see, you have the subcostal nerve, which is a continuation of the 12th thoracic spinal nerve, which may join with the first lumbar nerve, which is present within the substance of the psoas, and then from there they traverse, or they cross the posterior abdominal wall, that is the quadratus lumborum and the fascia, the lumbar fascia, okay, thoracolumbar fascia, and then they enter the muscle, the transversus abdominis muscle, and they pierce and come out both the iliohypogastric and the ilioinguinal nerves. They pierce the transversus abdominis and they reach their respective places. The iliohypogastric will reach the suprapubic region, and ilioinguinal will reach the inguinal fold and supply the skin. So if you remember, umbilicus is around lumbar vertebral L1, L2 levels, but the skin around the umbilicus is supplied by T10, and L1 supplies the suprapubic. T12 also supplies the hypogastrium. So it makes sense that the T12 joins with the iliohypogastric to supply up to the suprapubic region. Okay. So after forming the lumbar plexus, the remaining fibers from the fourth lumbar ventral ramus and the fifth lumbar ventral ramus join to join together to form the lumbosacral trunk, which descends down to join the sacral plexus. So the dorsal divisions of second and third lumbar rami unite to form lateral femoral cutaneous or the lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh, as I already mentioned. So this is a brief summary. This table gives you all the nerves and their root values. There are some muscular branches which arise from T12, L1 up to L4, which will supply the posterior abdominal wall muscles and the dorsal muscles, that is the back muscles, and also the anterolateral abdominal wall muscles. The iliohypogastric, usually the root value is L1. Ilioinguinal also, common presentation is root value is again L1. So iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal both can have L1 as root value, but if T12 also contributes, then T12 may be included, but that is not very common, may be seen in about 12 to 13% of cases. The genitofemoral is formed by the dorsal divisions in the ventral divisions of, basically genitofemoral is from L1 and L2. Lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh is from the dorsal divisions of the L2 and L3. Iliohypogastric and ilioinguinal only from L1 in majority of the cases, that is in more than 60%. Genitofemoral is from L1 and L2. Lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh or the lateral femoral cutaneous nerve L2 and L3. This lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh pierces or comes under the inguinal ligament and then passes into the thigh, where it divides into an anterior branch and the posterior branch and supplies the anterior and lateral aspects of the thigh. The femoral nerve is derived from, or it is formed from, the dorsal divisions of the ventral primary rami of L2, L3 and L4. Okay, and the obturator nerve is also formed from the ventral primary rami of the L2, L3 and L4, but the ventral divisions of ventral primary rami of L2, L3 and L4. And when accessory obturator nerve is present, it is formed from ventral divisions of L3 and L4. Again, you can see here the light colored nerves are the ventral divisions and the darker colored are dorsal divisions. Okay, the femoral nerve is derived from dorsal divisions. Obturator is derived from the ventral divisions mainly. So you have iliohypogastric, ilioinguinal, lateral cutaneous nerve of thigh, then the femoral, obturator and the genitofemoral nerves. These are the branches from the lumbar plexus. So looking at these individual nerves, the iliohypogastric usually originates from L1 ventral ramus, but may arise completely or partially from T12 ventral ramus also. It runs forwards between transversus abdominis and the internal oblique, which both of these muscles are supplied by iliohypogastric. Also ilioinguinal also will supply these muscles, and it contributes motor nerves to the transversus abdominis and internal oblique, where pierces them, and sensory fibers will also be supplied to muscles and innervates the posterolateral gluteal and the suprapubic skin. The ilioinguinal nerve arises usually from L1, but it may get a contribution from T12 or L2. So these common variations are encountered. Again, just like iliohypogastric, it pierces the internal oblique muscle and supplies it and traverses the inguinal canal. So it enters the inguinal canal superficial to the spermatic cord and the round ligament, and it emerges with the cord and divides into terminal sensory branches. So where the spermatic cord comes out of the inguinal canal, the ilioinguinal nerve also comes out along with that, and it divides into terminal sensory branches which supply the skin over the inguinal fold. So it supplies motor nerves to transversus abdominis, internal oblique, and these fibers are given before the nerve enters the inguinal canal. So this nerve, the ilioinguinal nerve, enters the inguinal canal from its internal or the lateral end. Okay, but before it enters, it gives off muscular branches to transversus abdominis and internal oblique. So while doing a hernia repair, if this muscle is, if this nerve is damaged, then you will have only sensory loss, not the muscle paralysis. And it also innervates the skin, which is proximal to the medial part of the thigh, and skin over the root of the penis and upper part of the scrotum in males. A skin covering mons pubis and the adjoining labium majus or labium majora in the females. Coming to genitofemoral nerve, as I said, it originates from L1 and L2 ventral rami and is formed within the substance of the psoas major. So essentially, the ilioinguinal and iliohypogastric may come out of the psoas major, or they may originate just before where the psoas major attachment is, or just near the proximal most attachment to the psoas major. But genitofemoral nerve is formed within the substance of the psoas major from ventral rami of L1 and L2. This divides into genital and femoral branches. As the name indicates, divides into genital and femoral branches. Genital branch will supply the genitalia, and the femoral branches will supply the skin over the thigh. So the genital branch crosses the lower part of the external iliac artery. As it descends down, you have the external iliac artery, which is dividing from the common iliac along the pelvic brim. So this genitofemoral nerve descends down, so it crosses the lower part of external iliac artery and enters the inguinal canal through the posterior part of the deep ring and accompanies the spermatic cord or the round ligament into the inguinal canal, and it supplies the cremaster muscle and the skin of the external genitalia. So if the genitofemoral nerve is damaged somehow, the only way in which you can demonstrate its loss or damage is by an absent cremasteric reflex. So the only muscle that is supplied by genitofemoral nerve is the cremaster muscle. The femoral branch descends lateral to the external iliac artery and crosses the deep circumflex iliac artery and then passes behind the inguinal ligament, and it pierces the femoral sheath, fascia lata, and supplies the skin of the upper part of the femoral triangle. So just below the inguinal fold, the femoral branch of the genitofemoral nerve is supplying. Coming to the femoral nerve, this nerve descends through the psoas major. It passes within the substance of the psoas major and emerges on or under its lateral border about 4 centimeters above the inguinal ligament. So as you remember, the psoas major muscle is arising from the lumbar vertebral bodies and the transverse processes. So between the two laminae you have the lumbar plexus forming. The femoral nerve, since it is contributed by major L2 to L4 and it is the largest nerve, it lies within the substance of the psoas major as it descends, and as the psoas major goes slightly medial, it emerges from the lateral border of the psoas major about 4 centimeters above the inguinal ligament and passes between the psoas major and the iliacus deep to iliac fascia and runs posterior to the inguinal ligament into the thigh. So this is one of the structures that passes deep to the inguinal ligament and comes out to supply the muscles in the thigh. While it is coming down from the abdomen into the pelvis or along the pelvic brim and into the thigh, it supplies the muscles it crosses, that is iliacus, pectineus, okay, and it lies lateral to the femoral artery and femoral sheath behind the inguinal ligament. So This is one of the structures in the femoral triangle which is not present within the or enclosed within the femoral sheath. The artery and the vein are enclosed in the femoral sheath, which is nothing but the facial condensation from the transversalis fascia and the external oblique fascia, which join together to form the femoral sheath, anterior layer and posterior layers. So, but this nerve lies lateral to that femoral sheath. Okay, so it is not included within the femoral sheath. So it is lateral to the femoral artery in the femoral triangle, and then it supplies all the muscles in the front of the thigh, that is the rectus femoris, the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis and the vastus intermedius muscles. Okay, and it will also supply the sartorius. The lateral femoral cutaneous nerve or the lateral cutaneous nerve thigh is derived usually from the ventral rami of L2 and L3, but it may get a contribution from L1 or from L3. It emerges from the posterolateral border of psoas major and crosses iliacus obliquely towards the anterior superior iliac spine. So goes very close to the anterior superior iliac spine and comes just under the it usually passes behind the inguinal ligament about 1 to 2 centimeters medial to the anterior superior iliac spine. So while it is coming out just under the inguinal ligament, since it is very close to that anterior superior iliac spine, when you squat for long durations, this nerve, and when you have tied something like Indian people do, they tie lungis or whatever, saris and all, and if you have something that is tight and if you squat for long times, there is a chance of this nerve getting compressed, and that chronic compression of this lateral femoral cutaneous nerve of thigh near its passage under the inguinal ligament can cause severe radiating pain, which is called meralgia paresthetica. It's called meralgia paresthetica. So that is one of the clinical aspects related to the lateral cutaneous nerve of the thigh. The obturator nerve descends within the substance of psoas major, just like the femoral nerve, and emerges from its posterior medial border. The femoral nerve has to go into the thigh, anterior aspect of thigh, whereas the obturator nerve has to supply the medial compartment muscle, that is the adductor compartment muscle. So it comes medially. So it emerges from the posterior medial border near the L5 vertebra, and it passes posterior to the common iliac vessels, lateral to the internal iliac vessels. So femoral nerve is going in front of the external iliac, and because obturator nerve is coming in, emerging from posterior medial border, and it is going posterior, it will cross internal iliac vessels and descends on the lateral wall of the pelvis, attached to the fascia over the obturator internus, and it lies anterior superior to the obturator vessels, where it running into the obturator foramen to enter the thigh. Basically, the obturator vessels and the obturator nerve emerge out through the obturator foramen. There is a small hole in the obturator foramen, which is kind of covered by the obturator membrane. On the upper part of that obturator membrane, there is a small hole through which the obturator nerve enters the medial aspect of the thigh, and where this nerve will supply the obturator externus muscle, the adductor magnus, adductor longus, and the pectineus muscles. So when the accessory obturator nerve is present, it is usually formed from ventral rami of L3 and L4, and it runs along the posterior surface of superior pubic ramus posterior to pectineus. It gives off branches to supply the pectineus and the hip joint. So the main nerves that cross this hip joint are the femoral nerve and the obturator nerve. these act on the muscles these supply the muscles which act on the hip joint and also the knee joint. So obturator and femoral nerve will supply both hip joint and the knee joint. And many times when there is pathology in the hip joint, you may feel a pain that is referred to the knee, which will confuse the orthopedician. The patient will say he has pain in the knee, but the problem may be in the hip joint. Okay, because the nerves which are crossing this or supplying the muscles acting on hip joint and knee joint will supply both of those. So there may be referred pain along that supply of the obturator nerve and the femoral nerve. Now coming to the lumbar sympathetic system. So the lumbar part of each sympathetic trunk usually contains 4 interconnected ganglia lying in the extraperitoneal connective tissue on anterolateral aspect of lumbar vertebrae along the medial margins of psoas major. What it essentially means is, if we go back to slide here, you can see, so this is the diaphragm, and you can see the sympathetic chain coming down, and it lies on either side of the vertebral column along the psoas major. Okay, so you will have lumbar sympathetic ganglia present here on either side of the vertebral column. Okay, so they are present along the anterolateral aspect of lumbar vertebrae along the medial margins of psoas major. Superiorly, it is continuous with the thoracic sympathetic trunk, posterior to the medial arcuate ligament at the L1, L2 vertebral level, because the crest of the diaphragm is attached along the L1 and L2 vertebral body. So this sympathetic chain is coming down from the thoracic sympathetic trunk. So it is continuous above with the thoracic sympathetic trunk. Inferiorly, it passes posterior to the common iliac vessels and it is continuous with the sacral sympathetic trunk, where there is a large network of fibers. The sacral splanchnic nerves, they emerge out of the sacral spinal segments and they form a vast network. So buried deep or very close to that sacral plexus, you will have the sympathetic chain passing down and kind of mixing with those plexus. Okay. On the right side, the sympathetic chain in the lumbar region lies posterior to the inferior vena cava. On the left, it is posterior to the lateral aortic group of lymph nodes, and it is anterior to most of the lumbar vessels but may pass behind some lumbar veins. The first, second and sometimes the third lumbar ventral rami are each connected to the lumbar sympathetic trunk by white rami communicants only. There is no gray rami communicants because the sympathetic outflow is only from the thoracic segments usually. So there is only one communication in the lumbar region. So all lumbar ventral rami are joined near their origins by long slender gray rami communicants from the 4 lumbar sympathetic ganglia. Okay, so only the first 2 which have the sympathetic outflow will have white rami communicants, but the gray rami communicants will be present for the rest of the all the 4 lumbar ganglia, okay, or lumbar sympathetic ganglia on either side. Okay, you can see there are white and gray rami communicants in the lower part, only white rami communicants only in the upper 2. Okay, and you can see here there are 2 white and gray rami communicants here, but there are only gray rami communicants for the lower lumbar sympathetic ganglia. So they form a plexus. All these they give off branches, medial branches and lateral branches. The medial branches basically form plexus around the abdominal aorta, and they also form these large ganglia which are related to the anterior and lateral surfaces of the abdominal aorta as it descends, and they form these big ganglia close to the origin of major blood vessels of the abdomen, that is celiac trunk, or it is the first anterior branch from the abdominal aorta. So there is a large celiac ganglion, a celiac plexus, which is around the celiac trunk. Then you have the superior mesenteric ganglion and plexus at the base of the superior mesenteric artery. Then you have left and right renal or suprarenal plexus on the ganglia, or aortico-renal plexus on the left side. Then you have intermesenteric plexus, and the intermesenteric ganglion may also be present. Then you will have lower down, you will have the inferior mesenteric ganglion where the inferior mesenteric artery arises. So the sympathetic ganglia give branches which will join with these plexuses and ganglia, and along with this sympathetic innervation, these ganglia and plexus also receive branches from the posterior and anterior vagal trunks as the parasympathetic innervation, but the parasympathetic fibers may not, they don't synapse in these ganglia. They pass through this plexus and they synapse in the Auerbach's plexus or the myenteric plexus. Okay, so the sympathetic system basically has this lumbar sympathetic chain. Along with that lumbar sympathetic chain, the sympathetic ganglia on and plexus around the aorta and its branches also receive branches from the greater splanchnic nerves and the lesser splanchnic nerves. Okay, greater and lesser splanchnic nerves also contribute to the formation of these plexuses around the abdominal aorta and its major branches in the abdomen. And as you come down, the fibers from the lumbar sympathetic ganglia, they join together and they form a superior hypogastric plexus around the L5 or S1 sacral, S1 lumbar, the L5 lumbar vertebral body, or the sacral first vertebral body, usually near the sacral promontory. So there is superior hypogastric plexus, which is not only sympathetic, it is both sympathetic and parasympathetic fibers are present. The parasympathetic fibers, which are contributing to the formation of superior hypogastric plexus, arise from the sacral spinal segments. From the sacral spinal segments, there are parasympathetic fibers which come from S2 to S4. They come and form a plexus just anterior to the sacrum, under the or behind the rectum, and those plexus is called, that plexus is called the inferior hypogastric plexus. And some fibers ascend up, they form a plexus or they contribute to the formation of superior hypogastric plexus. From here the fibers ascend up all the way up to the inferior mesenteric artery, and they run along with the inferior mesenteric artery to supply the abdominal viscera that are derived from the hindgut and which are supplied by the inferior mesenteric artery. So the lumbar sympathetic trunks are vulnerable during retroperitoneal nodal dissection. Their injury can impair seminal emission and lead to retrograde ejaculation, because the sympathetic fibers which are forming these plexus, they lead to vasodilator muscles, the vasodilators of the erectile tissue. So they can cause seminal emission problems or impairment in the seminal emission and retrograde ejaculation. The lumbar parasympathetic system basically is derived mainly from the vagus and the pelvic splanchnic nerves. The parasympathetic supply is from the vagus around the abdominal viscera to all the abdominal viscera from which are derived from the foregut and the midgut are supplied by the vagus, and those structures which are derived from the hindgut are supplied mainly by the pelvic splanchnic nerves. The vagus contributes to the formation of celiac and the superior mesenteric plexus. So when that plexus is formed around the celiac axis or celiac trunk, the fibers run along with the blood vessels, so they supply whatever structures are being supplied by those vessels. And along the superior mesenteric plexus being the midgut artery, will supply the midgut. So the vagal branches which form the superior mesenteric plexus will supply all the midgut as well. The pelvic splanchnic nerves are distributed through the hypogastric and inferior mesenteric plexus. So that is about the parasympathetic and sympathetic system. But along with that, there is something called as para-aortic bodies. So these para-aortic bodies are also called paraganglia, or collectively as the organ of Zucker-Kandl. They are collections of neural crest derived chromaffin tissue. The chromaffin tissue is nothing but the catecholamine producing cells which are in the adrenal medulla, but it's not only present in the adrenal medulla in the childhood. These para-aortic bodies are also present outside of the adrenal, so and they are also derived just like the adrenal medullary cells. These are derived from the neural crest cells, and this is found in close relation to the aortic autonomic plexus. So they are usually larger in fetuses and they grow up to the age of 3, but as you grow older and older, the size goes on reducing, and they are mainly involved in control of blood pressure by catecholamine secretion. So these para-aortic bodies are usually found as a pair of bodies which are lying anterolateral to the aorta in the region of inferior mesenteric and superior hypogastric plexus. But there may be many smaller collections, they may not be large. There may be smaller collections also on either side of the aorta or in front of the aorta. They may be found close to the celiac plexus also many times, okay, or they can be found as low as the inferior hypogastric plexus in the pelvis. So if something were to go wrong and these para-aortic bodies, the neural crest cells or the chromaffin cells, if they undergo some neoplastic changes, that will lead to extra-adrenal pheochromocytoma, okay, or paraganglioma. So this is one of the reasons for uncontrolled hypertension, which is called secondary hypertension. So have to keep it in mind when you are trying to evaluate a person with high blood pressures. Okay, that completes the class. If you have any doubts, please ask.